She spent 3 years telling the truth inside a velvet rope, and nobody in charge wanted to put her on camera. Clara worked at Millbrook Living History Museum as an 1847 interpreter. Every single day, she stepped into a world of candlelight and wool skirts and spoke to strangers like they were neighbors. She knew the names of the children who would have lived in that cottage. She knew what bread smelled like on a wood stove. Visitors stopped, they stayed. They cried sometimes, and they didn't know why. But Director Hargrove had decided Clara was too rough around the edges for promotional work. Too real, maybe. So every brochure, every campaign video, every donor event featured the polished faces Hargrove had carefully selected. Clara was kept behind the rope. Then James Whitfield started visiting. He came quietly, no introduction, no entourage. He was the anonymous foundation donor conducting a private assessment of the museum's programs. He found Clara's room on his second day. He came back the next day and the next. He never told her who he was. He just kept coming, standing at that rope, asking her questions nobody else had thought to ask. What did women dream about in 1847? What did they fear? What made a hard life feel worth living? Clara answered honestly, the way she always did, because that was the only way she knew how to be. And something in James went very still when she spoke. Hargrove noticed him. Of course she did. A man like James Whitfield. Quiet money, serious eyes, the kind of attention institutions compete for. She had been cultivating him for months, steering him toward her renovation vision. The grand lobby, the new exhibition wing, her name attached to something lasting. She invited him to every curated event. He smiled politely and left early. And then one afternoon, Hargrove overheard him at the front desk asking the volunteer a single question. Is Clara working today? Not the new exhibit, not the director's tour. Clara. Hargrove felt something cold move through her chest. She pulled Clara aside the next morning before the museum opened. Her voice was careful and sweet, which was always the most dangerous version of her. She told Clara that a major donor would be visiting and that Clara should redirect him to the main hall if he wandered her way. For the best experience, she said. For consistency. Clara nodded. She was used to being redirected, but James came anyway. He stood at the rope and looked at her with that same quiet attention. And Clara, who had promised herself she would stay professional, heard herself say, "I was told to send you to the main hall." He looked at her for a moment. "Do you want to?" "No," she said, and she laughed, surprised at herself. That was the afternoon he finally told her his name, his real name, and what he was actually doing at Millbrook. Clara went very still. 3 years of being invisible inside this building, and the man who could change everything had been standing at her velvet rope for 2 weeks asking her about women's dreams. Hargrove found out he had told her. The call came fast. Clara was summoned to the office and informed that her contract would not be renewed. Budget restructuring, Hargrove said. Nothing personal. Clara walked out of that office and stood in the parking lot in her 1847 dress and felt the full weight of it. 3 years. Every cold morning, every skeptical visitor she had won over one honest conversation at a time. Gone. She didn't call James. She didn't think she should. He found out anyway. The foundation's assessment was submitted 2 weeks later. Clara didn't see it, but the board did. It named her by name, 3 times. It described her work as the single most effective interpretive program the foundation had reviewed in 7 years of museum assessments. It recommended the museum build its entire public engagement strategy around what she was already doing. It also noted, in careful professional language, a pattern of internal gatekeeping that had suppressed the museum's most valuable asset. Hargrove's renovation proposal was declined. Her contract was reviewed. By spring, she was gone. Clara got a phone call from the board chair offering her a newly created position, lead interpretive director, full creative control, a real salary, her name on the programming. She was standing in her kitchen in regular clothes when James knocked on her door. He had a folder in his hand and an expression like a man who had been rehearsing something and forgotten all of it. "I wanted to tell you in person," he said, "before you heard it from anyone else." "I already heard," she said. He nodded. Then he said, "I also wanted to ask if you'd have dinner with me. Not as a donor, just as someone who has been thinking about you since the second day I walked into that room." Clara looked at him for a long moment. The man who had listened to her, who had asked what women dreamed about, who had seen her clearly when the whole building was designed to look past her. "Yes," she said. "Obviously, yes." She wore her own clothes. They talked until the restaurant closed. And for the first time in 3 years, Clara wasn't speaking across 2 centuries. She was just speaking, and someone was right there, listening like it mattered, because it did.